Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. There's another paid request, this time for Travis. And for those interested in requesting pretty much any type of videos or topics, randomness, reviews, whatever it may be, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now this is for the film Hard Times from 1975. Now Hard Times is a film I had not seen before, but it's the first film directed by Walter Hill. Same guy who directed Southern Comfort, which I love, with Powers Booth, may he rest in peace. And yeah, it's Sonny Landham. Wait, yeah, I think he had. No. Brian James was in the film. I would want to say Sonny Landham, but I think it's more of Brian James in the film. But yeah, Southern Comfort, very underrated film. You also had 48 Hours, which is a classic. You have Last Man Standing, which I think is an underrated Bruce Willis film. I do like Walter Hill movies. Extreme Prejudice with Nick Nolte, which just got a new Blu-ray from Vestron. So this is the first film he got to direct. And I guess originally the lead guy was supposed to be Jan Michael Vincent, who's a young up-and-comer guy who would go on to be in the TV show Airwolf, and he was in Hooper with Burt Reynolds, and he sadly passed away. And then the guy who's the gambler, he was supposed to be played by Warren Oates, who was Sergeant Holka in Stripes with Bill Murray, among other movies. But the cast came around to Charles Bronson, who was like 50 at the time, but he was in really good shape. And he was our lead guy, who's a drifter that comes in. You don't really know much about him, but you know, it's Charles Bronson. He's got that stature, and he's got that just tough guy presence to him. And he sees this bare-knuckle fighting going on. And this takes place in the Depression era. And one thing leads to another as he's watching these fights, and he teams up with James Coburn. James Coburn, he's a good actor. I'm trying to think what people might have seen him in. He was in Payback with Mel Gibson. And he's a guy that he's more of the talkative guy, gambler, sometimes gets himself in over his head, while Charles Bronson is more the guy of few words. You know, as Coburn says, I suppose you've been down a long, hard road, and Bronson goes, who hasn't? And so Coburn takes a chance with Bronson, and Bronson's able to knock out this guy in one damn punch. He's like, oh shit, yeah, this guy could make some money. And I'm like, man, this almost seems like a precursor to Lionheart with Van Damme. Or with bare-knuckle fighting. Bronson, his character, you don't get a lot of development, but I didn't mind him in this because you could tell he's a guy that likes to watch and study people. He watches, study his opponents, maybe watching, studying James Coburn if he's on the up and up, other people. I kind of get that vibe of him. At one point, the two get this guy who can deal with sewing up people, is a doctor. At one point he had a problem with opium. To be perfectly honest, in the long run, I don't know why he's in the movie, because there's never a point, or very, very rarely a point, where Charles Bronson needs fixed up. There's no blood in the movie. Other than one bit in the end where Bronson gets a cut here, there's no blood in the movie. So these are bare-knuckle brawls, so some would say it's kind of like a comic book aesthetic to it, where the punches are very heavy-sounding haymakers, which I like. I'm a sucker for that. Because it's movies, it's escapism. At least that part of escapism. That part of escapism I could deal with, because I love the Rocky films when they have the big over-the-top sound effects. But it is weird when you see these fights and there's no blood, no bruises. And I'm like, I wasn't sure how to feel about that. Because it does look a bit weird. I know Walter Hill had a reason for not having blood in it, but I forget what he said. Somebody would change the tone or something else to it. I forget what it is. It comes off as weird, and again, makes you go, well, why do you need this? You know, cut me, bitch, cut me. What? You don't need a doctor then. Like, there's rarely a time where Bronson's in trouble except a bit at the end. That doesn't mean he never gets hit. It's just there's never until the very end fight where it seems like he's in trouble. And even then, he gets like a low cut here, and James Coburn could have just put a damn Band-Aid on there or something. It just kind of makes me go, well, why do we have this other guy in the movie? But whatever. But I do like the fights because they come off as a nice dance. They come off as pretty decent choreography. You know, it's mainly fisticuffs, bare knuckles, pop, 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 pop. But you know, each one was fun to watch. And James Coburn was likable. I think he worked well in the role. Charles Bronson did what he needed to do. I thought the movie aesthetically wise looked nicely made and made it seem like in the Great Depression era, with the certain areas these fights take place in, whether it be warehouses, docks, even ones like by a fishing dock, other places, the clothes they wear, you know, it looked, you know, fairly decent. It didn't look like anything that was too egregious. Like, that's bullshit. At one point, there's a fight in this big, kind of a steel cage, really. I also like the fact that there's no music during the fight, so it made it seem a bit different. Don't get me wrong, I love music in fights when done well. The Rocky films, Lionheart, and I would put those for me personally above this film. But it not having music, I'm like, this, okay, there's a bit of a different feel to it. You know. Like I said, the fight scenes were fun to watch, although you never really get a sense of Bronson in danger like you do with a Stallone or Van Damme in some of their fight scenes, because it's only until the very last fight where he gets a little bit of in trouble. But again, you never really get a sense that he's going to lose at all time. Or really any time, you don't really get a sense he's going to lose, except maybe a little bit at the final fight. There are scenes with his wife, which Jill Ireland. I understand it's his wife. He wanted to put her in various, and he did in various other movies. That led to nowhere. Those scenes were just rather boring. They sit, she talks a bit. It doesn't really result in anything. It just results in, or her husband came home and Bron's like, okay, well, that's the way it is. That kind of thing, and then that's it. So, honestly, this film, I think, would be better if you just took out all those scenes with Jill Ireland, because they were just tedious, they were dull, and they led to nothing. I would have preferred more scenes with Bronson and James Coburn getting to know each other instead. Like, take all those scenes with Bronson and Jill Ireland, just put in more scenes, even if it's James Coburn talking and Bronson listening. And talk about, like, his Coburn's past, or what he could do, what he might do, what he wants to do. I think that would have been much more acceptable, much more interesting to me than, again, the quiet drifter, the talky gambler. Again, showcase even more of this perhaps bond between the two, I think would have been more effective than the Jill Ireland useless crap, honestly. And the story's pretty thin. I mean, it's sometimes James Coburn talking, or Charles Bronson with Jill Ireland, then there's a fight, or there's another bare-knuckle fight, or there's a point where a guy rips him off, and then fun little scene where Bronson goes in, beats up some people in a bar, and is able to get the money back. gets the guy's gun, shoots up the jukebox. I like that bit. Spoiler alert, Coburn gambles the winnings with money that he got a loan from these bad guys. So he gets threatened by people, including Frank McRae, who I remember from, he was the captain in Last Action Hero in 48 Hours. He was in Stallone's lockup. He only appears in like 1 or 2 scenes. And so in order to help James Coburn out, Bronson does one final fight. He gets in a little bit of trouble. Again, I like the fight scenes, the bare-knuckle choreography. Like I said, it's a bit weird that there's no blood, no bruises. Other than, like, Bronson gets one cut here. And maybe in the last fight the other guy gets a little bit. Maybe. But not a whole lot. I can't remember now. But, spoiler alert, Bronson wins. Gives share of the money to James Coburn. Leaves. That's the end of the movie. So, it's not a film I would ever watch again. I mean, if I want bare-knuckle fun, I'd probably watch Every Which Way But Loose or Any Which Way You Can with Clint Eastwood, where Clint Eastwood also does bare-knuckle brawls, but there's just a lot more for me to talk about, be entertained by, whether it be the silly antics of Clyde or other bits there. Although in Every Which Way But Loose, that's also a romance that goes nowhere. Common theme. But in Any Which Way You Can, there's a little bit more to that romance, to be fair. It does go somewhere in the sequel. But I would say I'd probably prefer watching those over this. In Bronson, I mean, this was not a bad film. This was alright to watch for what it is. But I would say I prefer Death Wish 3, which is my favorite. I prefer Evil That Men Do, 10 to Midnight, Murphy's Law. But I would rather watch this than Kinjite. I'd rather watch this than Assassination, which I thought was fairly generic. This, again, I like James Coburn. I like little bits between him and Bronson. I wish there was, again, more of a flourish to that. Again, get rid of the Jill Ireland stuff entirely. Like I said, the story's pretty thin, but it was alright. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it was alright. It's kind of hard for me to go into what else to talk about the film, because there's not a whole lot there. There's a lot of critics that seem to think of a lot more substance to this film than I saw in it. I'm like, well, you know, I saw it more in Lionheart with Jean-Claude Van Damme, to be honest. And I would say I prefer Lionheart more so than this film. But for Walter Hill's first movie, it's okay. It's a good start. He would get better. I definitely put 48 Hours in Southern Comfort above this. I would put The Warriors above this. Another good one. But again, not an awful start to the Walter Hill's career. With that said, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.